Hello there, welcome to my views and news. Viewers, I have received some confidential documents about Ethiopian new narrative. Ethiopian government wants access to the sea. PM Abiy has spoken twice so far, making his position clear, his government's position clear. It's not very clear, by the way. Uh, these secret documents which we somehow obtained show why Ethiopia is so convinced. If you remember, when PM Abiy spoke at the parliament 3 days ago, I said that he looked very convinced, very determined that no matter what happens, Ethiopia must have access to the sea. So, why is the government so determined, and what led to this determination? I've been saying there's method in the madness of Ethiopian PM Abiy. It's not that just out of the blue he took this position. No, discussions held, papers prepared, submitted, approved, and then finally government decided to adopt this position that Ethiopia must have access to the sea. What led to this position? What documents were prepared to convince the Prime Minister? Why is Prime Minister so convinced? Well, the confidential documents which we have received show the comparison between the amount of fees being paid by Ethiopia to a neighboring country and the money being paid by some foreign countries for having military bases, naval bases in a neighboring country, and a neighboring country which is Ethiopian neighbor. This comparison shows that Ethiopia is paying much more than foreign countries who have their bases, naval bases on Red Sea. Why is Ethiopia paying much more than those countries? Countries from Europe, from North America, they have come to the Red Sea. They have established their naval bases here, while Ethiopia is paying for each and every activity of imports and exports. So, what are the numbers? How much is Ethiopia paying? How much those countries are paying? I'm talking about foreign naval bases in Djibouti. In Djibouti, US has a naval base, China too, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, Germany, Spain, France. Several countries have naval bases in Djibouti on Djibouti's coast. How much are these countries paying? US, when it signed the lease deal with Djibouti, uh, started paying around 60 million US dollars to Djibouti per year. All these countries have acquired land on lease from Djibouti. Djibouti has leased its coast to these countries for naval bases, and their naval forces of these countries are operating, and the land is on lease, so the countries are in control of the land. China is reportedly paying 100 million US dollars annually to Djibouti's government. And these leases are, each of these leases is for a decade, some for more than a decade, or they can be extended to more than a decade or 2 decades. Though these bases are very close to each other, but it means that Europe, European countries, US, they have a foothold now on Red Sea coast in Djibouti. Ethiopia wants a similar arrangement. It wants to have a piece of land, coastal land in a neighboring country, Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, Somaliland, where it can deploy its naval forces and it can use the area as a port too. And there should be a port already built there. So it wants either full rights on the port, coast, corridor leading to the port, or it wants a lease. If Djibouti can lease its land to US, China, Saudi Arabia, Germany, France, Spain, why can't it lease the land to Ethiopia? Ethiopia is paying around 2 billion US dollars to Djibouti annually in port fees, as Ethiopia is using Djibouti's port for imports and exports. 2 billion US dollars. US paying around 60, 70 million US dollars to Djibouti annually. China paying 100 million US dollars to Djibouti annually, and Ethiopia paying 2 billion US dollars annually to Djibouti. That is what is mentioned in the documents which we have received. These documents were prepared and then submitted. PM Abiy's government held several discussions. It was then decided that the government should publicly announce its position, Ethiopian government, that it wants to have access to a port, access to sea, and government can try to try to back this narrative by citing historical references, etc. So it means that it's not that Ethiopia only wants port in Eritrea, though Assab suits Ethiopia. But if Djibouti is willing to cooperate with Ethiopia, Ethiopia would be happy to, I think. And maybe Djibouti could be a more reliable partner, because UAE established a military base in Assab, Eritrea. Then UAE had to close its military base in Assab. Was it due to UAE Eritrea tensions, or UAE found a better alternative? It's not clear, but UAE stopped using Assab port. UAE was using this port to supply weapons to its proxies in Yemen. Djibouti could be a more reliable partner. Why? Because already foreign players are operating on Djibouti's soil. All the countries I mentioned, they have their naval forces there, they have their naval bases there. And Djibouti is abiding by agreements signed with those countries. And Djibouti militarily is not a very strong country. I think while we are linking the Ethiopian port demand to Ethiopia Eritrea tension, we must be clear that Ethiopia wants support in a neighboring country. If Djibouti is ready to cooperate, Ethiopia would be willing to cooperate with Djibouti as well. But PM Abiy's sudden, and Djibouti is getting $2 billion from Ethiopia. Why would it agree to a lease to Ethiopia for 100 million, 200 million US dollars? So Ethiopia tried, I think. Ethiopia tried to convince Djibouti. It did not work. It offered shares in GERD, in Ethio Telecom, etc. It did not work. And Ethiopian government does not want to pay cash to the host country. Rather, it wants to. It is offering shares in Ethio Telecom, in GERD, etc. Because Ethiopian economic conditions don't favor paying of 100, 200, 300 million US dollars to a neighboring country annually. Ethiopia is making an offer that it is ready to offer shares in its assets. So we can conclude now by saying that Ethiopia is trying different options. Where will Ethiopia get a port? It's not clear. Maybe Ethiopia is sending a message to all the neighboring countries. But only point is that, which I want to make, is that it should have been a purely business deal. It should have been handled by a businessman like approach. But PM Abiy suddenly upped the ante, which led to serious bilateral regional tensions. And we saw statements from Djibouti, Somalia, Eritrea, all criticizing Ethiopian government. Somalia calling PM Abiy a madman. Djibouti also criticized Ethiopian state media. Eritrea said that sovereignty is non-negotiable, Eritrean sovereignty. So PM Abiy should have played his cards smartly. He did not. He's not trying to control the damage, trying to share details of what he wants. He only wants access to sea, to a port through a lease or through full rights on a port. Let's see which country is going to be willing to host Ethiopia. That will see. Will Djibouti lose $2 billion of annual fees? Uh, that is also a matter of concern for Djibouti. So talks are underway in the background between Djibouti and Ethiopia reportedly. We are not sure about any progress, but Ethiopia has made its intentions clear. It does not want to pay 2 billion US dollars annually. It wants a lease or full rights on a port in a neighboring country. Thank you for watching.